Okay, I think we'll make a start. My name's Sheila Brown. I'm an Inspector of Education, and I'm going to lead the session today, and we'll have some contributions from a couple of schools as well. Just draw your attention to the first slide. As we've said, if you can turn off your microphone, please, if you know, it will stop any interference and background noise. And if you can use the chat pane, please, if you want to ask any questions, put any comments as the session goes on. It's a 45-minute session, and as you'll know, it's called Successful Approaches to Family Learning and Parental Engagement. So we're going to cover some of that. And I just wanted to remind people that this session is being recorded and it's started filming now. Yep. Okay, so we're going to talk a bit about family learning and parental engagement. And I wanted to first of all say that, as a lot of you will be aware, that family learning is an important way of engaging parents, children and young people in their learning. We carried out a national thematic review of family learning, which some of you may be aware of, before schools closed in March 2020. It was done just at the turn of the year, and it's now published. And although we know things have changed substantially, the lessons from it remain relevant as we move into recovery from following COVID-19. So during that review, we visited 41 family learning settings around the country, and we spoke to over 400 parents, we spoke to carers, we spoke to children and young people and staff and partners. So we had a wide-ranging source of evidence to draw from. So before we go into our first speaker from one of the schools, I wanted to briefly kind of make reference to some of the main strengths and areas of improvement from the report. And what we found was that most schools and early learning settings where family learning was taking place were building those positive relationships with parents, and that's a really helpful starting point. And I think the contributors will certainly talk about that as well. And that's kind of key to successful family learning and parental engagement. What we found was that family learning in schools is starting to improve outcomes in terms of attainment and achievement. And particularly where families are facing challenges, it's helping them address some of those issues in their lives. Children and young people have increased confidence, self-esteem and engagement in their learning as a result of parental engagement and family learning. And we found that some adults engaged in their children's learning were going on to gain qualifications, to gain employment, etc. Some of the areas for improvement we found was that we thought by developing a kind of stronger understanding of the key features of family learning would help schools and their partners set out the aims and outcomes. So we've thought that partners needed now to establish robust arrangements to enable them to report on the impacts of family learning, because what we found, there were a lot of strong impacts, but people weren't always able to demonstrate in terms of what those were, and that people needed to celebrate and disseminate that practice. We also found that those progression routes, for example, for adult learners, need to be more integral to family learning activities programmes as well, and that effective partnership working can help improve that. So that's just to give you a sort of flavour of what we found from the report. And I'm now going to hand over to Laura Jarvie, who is the head teacher at Cardenshore Primary School in Falkirk. And there she is, Laura appears. And I'll work the slides, Laura. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks. So hi there, my name's Laura and I'm the head teacher at Cardenshore Primary School in Falkirk. And our journey with family learning really started about 5 years ago with the introduction of PEF. And one of the things that we do here is we track our children holistically. And what we did was, it's actually on the wall behind me, in about November time every year, I meet with the teachers and we discuss the children that are in their class. And what I ask the teachers to do at that point in our tracking processes is to think about the child and if they're worried about them. And we have a section behind me where we actually visually put up the names of all the children that are worrying them. We say these children are maybe not quite on track, but they're getting support, and then we know all the children that are doing well. And what we found through going through that process was that quite often the children that were on the section where teachers were saying we're worried about these children, and they could be worried about them because of their academic the abilities, it could be their mental health, it could be cleanliness, attendance. So there was various reasons why the child might appear on that wall. Sometimes they could be doing really well academically, but maybe there was something else that the teacher was worried about. And what we saw when we looked at those names on the wall was that actually there was a lot of connections. It was families. So if there was a child in primary 7, then perhaps the sibling in primary 5 and 3 and 1 were also on that section of the board. So we recognised that we needed to do something around the families within our community. So we used our PEF money to employ a full-time education welfare officer, which is a sort of similar role to a family support worker. And we also employed our community learning and development worker, Vary, who unfortunately can't be with us today, and she's super as well. So that was what we did as part of the team within Canshore. They were there to support us. So what some of the things that we did for our families was we really wanted to listen to them. Every family faces different barriers, and they need that approach to be personalised. It doesn't need to be complex all the time. It can be something really, really simple that the family is needing our help with. We recognised that a universal approach, so getting all these people together in one room, wasn't going to work. We really needed to work with each family individually and find out what we could do to support them. We talk about our approach as being really bespoke. That's because every single family has needed something a wee bit different, and I will give you some examples of that. And it's also been really, really important that they've had a key person in the school. That might be myself as the head teacher, it might be another member of my senior leadership team, it might be my education welfare officer, it might be the community learning and development worker, it might be the clerical in the office. It really is just dependent on that family and the relationships that they have. We talk a lot about being kind to our families, even when we don't feel it inside. We try to be subtle and compassionate to make them feel that we're genuinely caring about them. Doing the right thing, you know, as Sheila mentioned, relationships, we all know how important relationships are. We talk a lot about supporting families to look upstream to the future and what the future could look like for them, and we walk alongside them to get there. And that was never true more than when COVID hit, because we experienced COVID at the same time as our families did. We were shocked by what was going on, and we were able to sort of share that, whether it was virtually or on the telephone or collecting the dinners, because we were providing obviously lunches every day, and we were able to sort of walk along with them as we sort of got used to life in the new normal. We also highlight that there isn't a quick fix to supporting our families. Sometimes it can take an awful lot of time, and for some families we've been providing a bespoke approach for perhaps 5 years and we've still not quite got there yet. I think the reality is, if there was a magic fix to all of this, we would definitely all be doing it by now. So it can really, really take time. And a big part of what we're doing is sometimes signposting families to other places so that they can get support. And that all of that really helps them to engage in their child's learning. And I would just say at this point as well that Vary, my CLD worker, is really good at knowing signposts about places to go for parents that might be able to support them. So as I talk about all that, and that's the sort of overview, the thing in my head was that we're doing these bespoke packages, we're providing all the support to the families. How am I actually going to prove that this is making a difference to the children in my school? I could feel the difference that we were making. I could feel it. I could tell you the story, but I was really concerned about how was I actually going to prove that my investment from my PEF money was having an impact on the achievement and the attainment of the children. So if we move to the next slide, I'm just going to talk you through. I've got 3 examples, and I'll just try. I've used 3 examples, but I'm slightly changing the contexts to protect identities of the families. So one of the ways I have actually found that I can measure the impact of the work that we've done is in the child's attainment and learning. And I've used this example here of reading. So in our school, we've got a really big play-based focus in our learning, and our reading is really taught in the same way it's always been taught. We haven't introduced any new reading schemes. We haven't done anything different. Our teachers are teaching it the same way that they have, using the same resources that they have, but we have seen significant improvements in reading, and we believe a lot of that's to do with their family learning approaches for certain individuals. So this child, you can see that the gap starts to open up in their achievement of reading, and they really make no progress for a period of time. And this was a family that we really focused on their health and well-being, and you can see quite clearly, and I think this is why I've used this example, that the gap starts to close during lockdown. So before we went off for lockdown, there was still quite a significant gap there in their reading ability and their reading attainment and their reading results. But following that first lockdown, the gap almost closed. And I think this case taught us a few things. It taught us that we don't always know what's best as the teachers, because the teachers were really worried, always worried about this pupil. They were never doing the reading homework. There was no engagement in the work that was being set during lockdown from the class teacher. And people were worried about what they were doing, but they were coming to school and collecting lunches. They actually collected seeds, we were giving out some free seeds to grow vegetables and things. And they engaged in all of that, and they did a lot of playing, and they did a lot of talking. And we just kept reassuring them, it's okay, don't worry about the work, don't worry about the school work. You know, if you're doing that, that's fine. And they brought in actually the vegetables that they had grown in the summer to show us. And that pupil, I'm really happy to say, is on track for their learning now. So if we move on to the next person, pupil B. That's great. So this was a child that we were worried about, because actually they weren't even registering on our assessments. They were not even registering as starting to have ability to read. And for the teachers who are listening, you know, they just didn't even know their initial sounds. And we know children like that, where we teach them initial sounds in primary 1, we teach them in primary 2, we're going into primary 3, we're still not really getting anywhere. And you can see for this child that there's no progress for a while, and then suddenly they're on it and they just zoom away. And it's just that idea that when we're focusing on the health and well-being and the family, and you know, for this person, perhaps what we did was we actually provided them with resources to decorate the wee one's bedroom, and that came through the CLD worker and the education welfare officer. Those sort of approaches really helped them at home to feel happier and settled in their environment. And when that child came back to school, they were ready to learn, and they're now very independent in their learning. They don't require the same level of additional support. And it's just that sort of thing that the learning can stop for a wee while, and then it can come away again. So the third pupil I was going to talk about, this was a pupil where we were worried about them for a long time, their progress. And you can see again that it starts from way off the chart, you know, years of not making any progress, of not registering. And this family have received support over the entire time that we've been doing a family learning approach. And you know, that it was that we would have tracking meetings, and we would constantly talk about the level of support that was going in, and we were not really seeing any impacts or any improvements, and we would be really worried about it. And we would meet regularly, and we would talk about the worry that we had for what was going on here. And really what you can see from this is that there's a bit of a shoot up, and then there's a gap, and that gap maintains for quite a while, and then it just closes. And that was, I believe, because there was improvements for that family in terms of the parental employment, there was health improvements, and it took us a long time to get there. But this pupil and his environment and his family were then in a place where they were able to learn and access their learning. And it just shows that years and years of input did have an impact in the end. So if If we move on to my final slide, this was where Vary would have joined us and would talk more specifically, because Vary gets some of our toughest cases, some of the families that we're perhaps most worried about, and she is really good. And sometimes, in terms when I talk about having a bespoke approach, sometimes Vary just simply has a conversation with them. It can be one conversation and that makes the family think or do something differently, and other times she's providing more intensive support. And she talks about one family at a time, and that doesn't mean that she's only working with one family at a time. It just means that quite often in CLD they'll pull families together. With this approach here, there have been times where that's been appropriate and she's made links, but other times where it's been more appropriate that she's worked with that family on their own. She develops the relationships with the parents first, and we always take the pressure off in terms of the pupil, the child and their attainment. She talks about co-production, so she finds out about them and finds out what they can do. She helps them to get a positive link with the school and with us, because quite often some of these parents are anxious about school and intimidated by us, so she helps us to develop those relationships. She looks at the bigger picture, she liaises with the police and other people and really gets that community learning and developmental approach. She says a big part of her job is understanding, and not just always being ready to respond and trying to fix it. And sometimes she knows that she can be in that place of listening to understand for quite a long time. She talks about adult learning and family learning going hand in hand. She has helped parents get jobs, which has transformed the family life. She has encouraged parents to come in and work in the school and grandparents into the school, which has changed relationships and attitudes, and has really helped. And all of this has really been about empowering parents as partners, with a parity of participation, and it really is genuinely about us being partners with them. And I think all of our case studies have really, for us, really show us that sometimes as educators we don't actually know what's best for that family and that child, and they can tell us, and we can help them with their journey. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for your very concise description of the work that you're doing and the work that we saw when we visited you. So thank you very much for that. Can I now move on to our next contributor, who is Sharon Mitchell and her colleague Tracy Berry from Fourth View Primary School in Edinburgh. And this was another one of the visits that we went on during the Family Learning Review. So over to you, Sharon and Tracy.
Hi there, everyone. So welcome to the session. We are slightly different from Canshore, but a lot of overlap and similarities. So I am Sharon Mitchell, a head teacher at Fourth View, which Sheila said, which is based in Pilton in the north of Edinburgh, which is an area of multiple deprivation. We were also part of the thematic inspection in January 2020, which feels like at least about 2 lifetimes ago now, I think, with everything that's went since. Our family support role is different and it's not PEF funded. So it has existed for a long time. It's evolved over the time. The focus has always been supporting families, but Tracy has done it for 12 years part-time and then 14 years full-time after that. And she is a qualified teacher, so does have some teaching commitment as well. It does take a long time to build it up. So we're now at a point that we can get multiple generations and knowledge of the families, which definitely helps in building trust and respect. It is funded, however, by positive action funding, so that's how we've done it pre-PEF. So my sustainability concerns don't come from PEF and what may happen to that. It's more about as and when Tracy retires, which hopefully is not too soon, what happens to all that knowledge and how we develop it, because she does go very much over and above on a daily basis through her own choice, not through my expectations on her. So yeah, we need to think, like I say, in the future about the sustainability aspect and planning for that, but hopefully we'll have time to do that. It does take a very long time to build the relationships, and sometimes it is chipping away. We, much like all the children when they come here, we have a universal support, so Tracy would generally always be the first point of contact for nursery, for primary 1, for any families who move into the area at certain points. She would meet them, out with COVID, give them a tour of the building, go around and introduce key staff. At the moment, that is round outside of the building, peering in the windows at points, but still we're making that effort to try and build that relationship from the start so that she knows who to go to at all those times and that people know how to contact her. As it is chipping away at it, much like all of us, I suppose. If people started prying a bit into our lives or asking us, we would be a bit suspicious. It takes a long time for the trust and respect to build and for family to share more and what they're comfortable with. So that's different for each family. And a bit like Canshore, we do offer more targeted support for some. So for some families, it's maybe just knowing who to contact with any concerns about anything that may have happened in the playground at the start or the end of the day, to maybe ask some curriculum advice. For other people, that will be quite intensive support, sometimes at 10 o'clock on a Friday night if Tracy answers her phone at that time. So it's very different and it evolves over time, and sometimes it can be a bit like this. Families need more support, hopefully at points they need less support, but events can change that over time, and COVID certainly had a big impact and change on that for who maybe needed that support. So like I said, we meet them where they're at and just see what any concerns they might have had, any experiences they've had before Forthview, maybe even before Scotland, see what they might need, what their previous experiences are, and just kind of start to build the relationship and respond in that way. So yeah, like I say, she's got a work phone, so families can reach her specifically. That could be during the school day, it can be in the morning to say their child's unwell, it can be at the weekends and holidays. That's very much her own choice to do that. It's nobody's expectation on her. If anything, I think me, along with probably every single head teacher that came before me, has told her that she works too much and not to do as much, but she generally doesn't listen all that well. She's sitting smiling in the background, I don't know if everyone can see that there. So yeah, they can reach her weekends, holidays, she will get back to them. While it's not an expectation, it is reassuring to know that there is a point of contact, and that if anyone was stuck in the holidays, they would make contact that way, and then Tracy can contact the relevant person. Also, other agencies would link in with her over the holidays, any concerns like that. And other agencies would also let us know, maybe particularly over COVID, about any funding that they had, any meals, and Tracy coordinated all that side of things as we tried to find our way through the new normal, as it were. Like I say, so supports can be different. It could just be a listening ear. It could just be a smile at the gate. How are you doing? It can be linking in with school staff. Sometimes there will be people are more comfortable perhaps speaking to Tracy a bit more informally, so they might speak to her at the gate and then she would liaise with school staff, vice versa. It also, Tracy would always speak to any new staff, whether that's student teachers, any new PSAs, anyone into the school, about how we run, and that helps with the ethos throughout all the school, that parents are very welcome here, and our doors normally with the COVID are open, and we do welcome the parents, and it wouldn't be unusual to see a different range of parents in school throughout the school day. It can also be, over COVID, we had to adapt. It could be a doorstep visit, it could be standing at the bottom of somebody's garden, because trying to keep those connections, particularly where mental health was a concern for either the child or the family, we had to adapt in that. Like it can be signposting to other agencies, it can be making the link, doing the introduction to a different agency, maybe just to help being the trusted person. It can be some groups around parental mental health. We've done some trauma recovery groups. Sorry, I've got loads of children going past my office, so I hope it's not affecting the sound too much at lunchtime. Intervention groups around parenting, around attachment. We've had the dads group. Lots of different things that Tracy will elaborate on just in a minute. However, as she is a teacher, she doesn't have a caseload for family support. So if we had a family where we thought maybe needed some more intense work and needed somebody in the home, that wouldn't be Tracy. She would liaise with them, she would pass on information, like say she would probably make the initial introduction, but she doesn't hold a caseload and doesn't work in the home. But she may be on the end of a phone talking a child down from a meltdown, or perhaps offering some parent strategies, maybe behaviour trip, whatever is felt that maybe that family needs, or sometimes just listening to the parents. So I think similar to Canshore, it's how do we evidence the impact? It's one of those things that's very difficult to evidence, but I think as when Alona was in doing the inspection, I think for parents to describe the intervention life-changing, in a few cases life-saving. I don't think we need to really say any more than that. I don't think we'll ever know what might have been without that intervention, but that's fine with me. I'm quite happy not to have had to deal with possibly awful scenarios. So I think a lot of the children are more settled, they are more secure and ready to engage in learning, but that certainly doesn't mean by any means that we're exactly where we want to be. It doesn't mean we've got everyone engaged. It just hopefully means that everyone's got a bit more support than they would have had otherwise. So Tracy, I think I'll pass over to you now to talk about all the different bits of your role, and then we'll maybe do a bit more post-COVID and how we've adapted.
Okay, I think, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. One thing I need to say is I love my job. I mean, I've done it for 26 years. I really love it. So yes, I wouldn't expect anybody that takes over from me to do what I do, but it has built over 26 years of me being a parent. How I did it at the beginning before my children were born to how I do it now is completely different. And a lot of that is because of the way that I wanted to be treated as a parent. It was a bit of, who do you teachers think you are? You know, I'm very important in my child's life. And as such, you should be treated like that. So I am a teacher trained, and I think that's really important. And a lot of what I've done is to involve the parents in their children's education the way that I would have liked to have done, the way that I would have liked to have been respected. And you know, and I was at some of the time during my children's education. So one of the main things I say is to get the children in a state ready to learn. And in order to get children in a state ready to learn, you have to work with the whole family. So Shan said, we take the family where they're at, we look at their strengths, and we then say to them, let's join you and we'll go through the next few years together in partnership. So we very much want to have a partnership with the family. And then to do that, I used to do the home visits because of COVID, and now we'd maybe do a walk and a talk, or I'd go do a doorstep. But prior to that, I visited every family at home. So I knew where they were coming from, because the key part to my job is relationships. When I've got a relationship with the family, so much more can be done. So as Shan said, I'm the key point of contact. So the parents come to me and I do the tour. So it's on that tour that I start to build that relationship. And then what I do is I build and build and build and build on it until we can get to a stage where I could involve them in the life of the school more readily if they were reluctant. I'm on the gate every morning, and I have been on the gate every morning prior to COVID for the whole since this school opened in 2003, it's been so much easier because they've got one way in and one way out, so they cannot avoid me. They might try to, but they cannot avoid me. So they come in, and every morning I am standing there and I'm welcoming them and I'm smiling at them and I'm asking how they're getting on. And I'm trying to remember about their family. I'm listening, I'm showing that I'm interested, I'm just chatting, just building up a relationship. They use the school mobile, they use the school Facebook, and we use Messenger, we use WhatsApp. A lot of the younger parents feel more comfortable on Messenger, and that's fine. I do whatever means it takes, whatever kind of communication that the parent wants to use, that is what I'll use to get that relationship going. Since COVID, the phone has been an absolute fabulous thing, because I still feel very connected, because I can respond immediately with a phone call or with a message. So that has kept us connected. There was a comment earlier about families of different race. We have 48 different nationalities in our school, every one of whom I meet. We either have interpreters at the beginning, or we have friends of friends, and we then get our families linked up with the same culture of them, with people that can speak the same language, so that they feel part of belonging to our school. And if they have to use other parents as translators, then they will do that at the beginning, obviously if it's nothing too confidential. So I've got a network of families in the playground who I use to help support, especially newer families to the school, if English is their additional language. One of things I wasn't going to start with, but I will. One of the things we've got on here is our family fun night. And our family fun night is where we celebrate the 48 different nationalities. And every nationality has their flags up. They have information about the country. And usually I have about 200 people there in the evening, pre-COVID, going around, looking at the different cultures, playing games, doing activities, craft activities, getting food. It's a really lovely event, and the staff attend it as well. But one of the first things that, the gate is the most important, but one of the things I would say is the open morning, because that's something most schools could do. And on our open morning, we have the families come in pre-COVID, and they have tea and coffee, something to eat. We mingle, we chat, and then we go into the hall, and there's a presentation from a member of staff, from the senior leadership team or myself or an agency, and we have a chat usually about the curriculum. And then after a 20-minute chat, the parents then go into the classrooms and see what's going on in the classroom. Usually the teacher is modelling the area of the curriculum that we've been talked about. And when they come out, this is the important bit for me, is we ask them what they saw that they liked, what they would like to learn more about, any information. And I use the comments from the parents as my next steps of what kind of groups the parents would like. And out of that came forest schools for parents, healthy eating for parents, some trauma work came out of that, areas about active learning, about big writing. So a whole lot of stuff comes out of the open mornings, and it's coming from the parents. It's very much, what do the parents and carers want, not what we think you need. And I think that's very important. We respect the fact that they have this knowledge of the children, and it's what they would like to take forward. So we do our open mornings 3 or 4 times a year. We do, and on this list here, you'll see, I don't know if my mouse is going around and you can see that, but on there is a whole lot of stuff. And this first, the box on the immediate to the right, is the parent and children activities. Our parents feel more comfortable coming in and hiding behind their children at the beginning. So I do peep groups, story sessions, we do craft sessions, come and see your children's works, celebrate the learning. We do all of that kind of thing to get the parent into school at the beginning, but they're more comfortable because their child is with them. If a parent, once I've got the relationship and the parent comes in and says, Tracy, I'm having trouble with some kind of area of parenting, I'm not an expert, but what we will do is we'll have a family meeting. So the child and the parent will come in, and everybody will have a voice there at the table, and I'll help to be the go-between between the child and the family to try and get areas of behaviour better and just have discussions. So there's a whole lot of that kind of thing. There's a lot of transition work, especially children coming into primary 1. We're doing more with the primary 7s into high schools, but that needs to be built on. And I do a lot of nursery, from home to nursery. I work with the nursery staff, so I do those home visits, which is fabulous because that is my beginning. That's my PR of, this is me. You'll see me in the gate in the morning. Please get to know me. What is it I can help you with? It's this relationship that I keep talking about. That's the key part to my job, being able to get that relationship. And as Shan said, it's chip away. It can take a long time. Sometimes parents can be really reluctant because they've had bad experiences themselves. And that's the families where I'm trying to find a family member that I know that will say, look, Tracy's not scary, you can say things, or a friend, or just chatting in the playground, or helping them in any way, or trying to remember that their mother was in the hospital and asking after them. Just anything, because once I've got that relationship, once I've got them in the school, then we can start doing this targeted work. Like Shan said, we're doing a whole thing of trauma, and that came from watching the Resilience film and a bit of a triage of these parents saying, that's me. And myself, the deputy head, trained in the Rock Pool Trauma Recovery Programme, and we can do that with adults and we can do that with children. That was really difficult during COVID, and I did weekly meetings with them on Messenger, on video, but it wasn't the same as face-to-face. So we then started to meet in back greens. We started to go for walks. So that was a really tough time during COVID for that trauma recovery group. But I'm glad to say it is starting again shortly, which is great. So we do that more targeted work. My dad's group was a hard group to get. They'll say I bullied them. I didn't bully, but I certainly did a lot of persuasion. Bacon rolls got them in the door. Then we did the Raising Children with Confidence, which is the City of Edinburgh scheme programme, which is fabulous. We did that. And then the dad's group went on to do some work in the library, which then went on to story writing, which then went on to them picking books for the parents' library, and them being involved in writing a book, which was good. We've had parents and children writing books. So once I get them in the door, there are so many different things you can do. Science club was an interest of the parents. We had somebody coming from the university to do that. We've done trips to the university to get the aspirations up, you know, that universities can be for anyone. And look, here it is, it's not scary. This is what you need to do. This is what your child needs to do. We have a very strong parent council. Lots of different cultures are represented on that, because that's important. We have fun events, and I'm just going through this slide, and we do a lot of multi-agencies, because there is a lot. I am only the one person. There's only so much I can do. I don't have expertise in different areas. So then I signpost, but I think, as Shan said, I would be the link. I would go with them to the different service. I would take them. I would get somebody in to speak to them. I would help them so it wasn't threatening, and we'd be able to get them to this other agency who would then support. We do a lot of work with Maximise, which is to do with benefits. And again, the parent would come to me to say, Tracy, I need money, because I've got the relationship with them. I could get Maximise involved with their benefits. I can get the money from Cash for Kids. We're in a very fortunate position. We've been given a bit of money, so I can hand out Morrison's vouchers from our Greg's Foundation. I can hand out money for rent. People are aware, and I don't target that. People are aware that we can help them, and they will come when the need arises. So there's a lots of things, and maybe it'd be better to stop there, because I don't know how the time is. There might be questions about my job. Okay. And that, that's that. Sharon, you want to speak about that? But I think we spoke about that.
Got about 7 minutes.
Right.
That's
most of that.
Just to sort of demonstrate that obviously COVID did have a massive impact on what we were able to do, and we had to kind of adapt very quickly at the start of first lockdown. By the second lockdown, we were able to get more families in, but just different things that we tried to adapt to try and keep connections, and mainly make sure that, you know, families were getting food, because we weren't seeing them every day, but, you know, food was going out 6 days a week. A lot of you will have been doing the same thing. Some children weren't coping. We arranged that staff went and met them for a walk outdoors. Sorry. Hopefully last one. You know, the same with parents and things. I think it's just adapting, like you said all along. It's all about the relationships, keeping the connection, and just trying to provide as much as families need within the parameters of what we have available and are able to do.
Thank you very much. We've got just about 5 or 6 minutes left, and I think there's been quite a bit of chat in the chat pane. Alona, is there anything you want to pick up? I know, Sharon and things, you've been answering some of these as we've gone along, which is great.
Yeah, I picked up any that I saw, I think.
Yeah, there's been particular questions about working with families that may be experiencing racism. And linked to that, also questions about parent councils and whether parent councils are diverse enough. But essentially that question of working with families that are experiencing racism, and whether anybody's got experience of doing that successfully.
I mean, families would approach Tracy if they did have concerns around that. We would put supports in. We do promote all the different nationalities. We do address it like any school would, you know, if it does come up as an issue. Equality is sitting in Edinburgh, and I'm sure across the rest of Scotland and beyond. It is a big focus this year, so we are going to do a focus group with children and with parents, because much as we maybe think we're very good at addressing racism, I think with all these things, once you start to maybe ask some questions, that might not, what we think and what families are experiencing might not match. So that will be something that we'll be looking into, but I'm afraid as yet I don't have any of the answers, because we'll have to see what comes out of that. But I think the family fun night certainly is well attended. We have managed to build diversity across our parent council all the time, and I think ultimately having a full-time dedicated teacher allows these things to be possible. You know, we still all work lots of hours, and you know, I fully get that schools that don't have that funding or don't have that resource will be limited and they can't do it. And I think people just have to start somewhere and build on that, I think, is what I would say. I'm very lucky that it was a very established role when I came here. But I think as long as there's a key contact, whether it's not necessarily a dedicated role, but somebody in the school that is approachable and people know who to go to, and just build from there.
I noticed that somebody was asking about the recording because they were a wee bit late in coming in. So our colleague Denise has put in the recordings available from next week on the SLF portal if you've missed part of the session.
So I think somebody's asking about ComEd and social work there. So on a Monday morning, normally the Sport for Learning, sorry, not Sport for Learning team at all, the leadership team meet with Tracy, and sometimes we meet with our counsellors and we would discuss any families of concern, anything that maybe happened over the weekend, any police reports that may have come in, any changes in behaviour might have seen, and then we generally would identify either supports we might signpost or who's got the best relationship with that family. That might be me, it might be one of the deputies, it might be Tracy, it might be somebody else. So we kind of pick and choose according to what we think will be most successful and most helpful. But we do liaise a lot across the team and with Tracy, but a lot of the social workers would generally have her mobile number as well if needed.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Alona, was there anything else in the chat you wanted to pick up in the last couple of minutes?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, to say just on the issue around racism, I know a lot of the groups and different local councils that have been working with Syrian refugees and who will now be working with Afghan refugees have included elements of family learning. So that's another area of source information you can go to within your local councils. Quite a few questions around that transition from primary 7 to secondary 1 and what the impact is. And I guess this is both to you and to Karen Shore about how you carry on that support or how that support is carried on, if not by yourselves, once children move to secondary. And I know you've touched on that a little bit, but it'd be good to say a bit more.
Sharon, we can talk about Lucy. This
year one of our teachers is going on secondment to the high school, so that's worked out well for a lot of the children, but that's not normal. So as a Sport for Learning teacher, I think it is having links with the high school and also parents knowing that we are still here. A lot of the children do quite often come back and visit us, particularly at the start of S1. That's been more difficult in COVID, though they still have appeared at the windows. We're all a one story, so they just come and wander around until they find somebody. A lot of the families we would still have links with. We have a lot of big families, but I think again it's just been responsive to need. The high school would make contact where they have concerns, or sometimes we hear from the community. I'm sure it's probably much the same in Karen Shore.
Laura, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, we work closely with the high school as well. We're quite fortunate because we have PE specialists and music specialists from the high school that actually work in our primary schools. So they start to develop the relationships. But my CLD worker and my EO both work with children in the high school as well. So it is quite a natural transition, and that support doesn't just stop when they move on. It's still there with those key families as well.
Thank you.
Somebody's asked you about, I think, specialist support teachers. We have an ESL peripatetic service. I'm not sure if that's what's meaning. It wouldn't so much be the family side, or we have Bernardo's and Children First. Again, I don't know how that spans out with of Edinburgh.
Yeah, okay. I'm aware we're just about coming up for time and we've been told not to run over. So I'd like to thank Sharon and Laura and Tracy very much for their inputs this afternoon, as we are now, for coming today and taking time out of their busy schedule to do that. And thank everybody for their participation. And I would encourage you to read the Family Learning Report if you want to follow up any of the other examples of practice that we picked up. I think Alona put it in the chat. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.